In the meeting. Afternoon, everybody. We have all board members present. I know the student reps were considering making it to this one, but they must not be able to make it. So we'll start with letter A, COVID considerations. Ms. Bullard.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. So we're kind of back at the COVID discussion. There's been information that has been coming out from the Department of Education and from the Minnesota Department of Health. And I think as a board, I think there's a couple of things that you're going to want to think about and consider as we think about what fall looks like and how we come in to start the school year. At this point in time, there are only two requirements that have been presented for schools. The first of which is the transportation requirement that students that are on public transportation, which include our school buses, are required to be masked. And so we'll have masks available for students on our school buses to meet that the federal requirements and that mandate. So that is linked into the agenda so you can see where that requirement is coming from. And then the other requirement that is out is that schools are still required to report any positive COVID case for a student or staff within our school district. And so that's nothing new to us, that we did that all last year. So that's a process that will be easy to continue and carry forward. The other piece that I really do want to just spend a little bit of time talking about are some of the considerations that are the rest of the considerations, which are really recommendations. The Commissioner of Education and the Governor came out early in July with that there's not going to be a requirement from the Governor or the Commissioner at that point in time for masking. And then a couple weeks later, or about a week later, the CDC came back with some recommendations for strong recommendations to consider. So I think that's one of the things that we're going to want to talk through. I think we've got some experience that might lend a good dialogue for our COVID team that I have pulled back together. So we're actually going to be meeting on Thursday of this week to kind of take a look at how did our summer school go. We had students in summer school and our students that were in summer school were not masked. We did not cohort them, and we didn't have any situations that extended to students being isolated or quarantined, and we didn't have any cases come through. So those are some things that I think we want to talk through and consider as we think about what some of the strong recommendations are from the state. I also think it's going to be important for us to take a look at what our local data is and be responsive as we have information in front of us. So again, some of the things that I just think that I want to remind you that we did last year that are recommendations that we just want to think through again would be, again, the big discussion is whether or not the local school board would require a mask mandate. At this point in time, I don't know that we're ready to make that recommendation. Obviously, this isn't an action meeting anyways, so I think that's more information to come. But I think that's something that we really want to do based on local data and have information presented to you before that decision would be made. Secondly, the recommendation to socially distance. I think we've seen how our students during summer school especially, we were able to program for them and we were able to keep them safe with cleaning and some of the other protocols that we've really learned some good things from our COVID experience about cleanliness, about hand washing, about some of the sanitization techniques throughout the building. So I'd like to take a look at that as a COVID team and then make a formal recommendation to the board. The other piece that I think is going to be of a little bit greater discussion is going to be the requirement or recommendation. And again, it's a recommendation to quarantine based on contact. So there's a couple of things that come into play when you have contact with a student that has a positive case or a staff that has a positive case. Some of the things for consideration will be vaccination status. If an individual has decided to get vaccinated, that would be one factor to consider. Obviously, symptomatic or asymptomatic would be another consideration. And then whether there's a family structure or it's just a classroom contact. So those are some of the things that I think are going to be important for us to consider as a board, that you, or for you all to consider as a board as we move forward. But those are the areas that were requirements last year that are now recommendations that the district should be thinking about. Again, what I would like to see if this is what the board would be amicable to, is to pull that task force together, get connected back with public health. Stearns County Public Health is reinstituting their data meetings and their information that's coming out to us weekly, and then track information between now and the start of the school year, and then make a formal recommendation to you at the board level on our August meeting, or our August business meeting. I know one of the things that I would like the board to consider is a resolution for the safety and health of the district. So it's a very similar process to what you looked at last year, and really does support the team of our school nurse, our administrators, myself, just being able to make fluid decisions quickly as the data would present versus having to have board action if there would be something that would be significant. Again, I think the team here in Paynesville did a fabulous job last year, really responding to the data, responding to just what was happening at each of the sites, making very, very localized decisions to really keep kids in school, to keep kids safe. And I really do trust that team has established some very solid protocols that I'd like to be able to continue to use if the board would support that. So at this time, I guess I'll open it up for questions from all of you.
One quick question. So you started out by talking about us deciding on the mask mandate and everything.
Yep.
So where would the state step in if we don't follow their guidance? Will they have financial penalties to us? I know there was some of that came up last year.
Sure.
So we all got kind of nervous about that. Obviously, they pay most of the budget.
Yeah, yep. So that's a fabulous question. There's a couple of things that are different this year that are not in play right now. So as I mentioned, the governor and the commissioner talked about not having a mask mandate. So the mask mandate and really the requirement for schools to be masked came from the executive order. So the executive order has expired, and that was one of those reasons why the Department of Education came back and said, this is an order by the governor. That's why you have to follow it. So the difference this year is that they're saying districts need to use their local control to make decisions around what's best for the students in that locale. So that's one of the big differences.
Other questions or comments, concerns? I think we're just all gonna be at that same point where we're just gonna sit back and wait for something to change like we did last year. I'd like to think that we're in a better, a more positive notion with our own control than we were last year. So hopefully that maintains and remains throughout the remainder of the school year, and we can collectively make the best decisions for our district. So I know we're gonna shuffle around the schedule a little bit, but actually Bruce brought up a good point. We should go to C before we do the tour. August 24th, the board meeting date, because that's important we get that situated first.
Yes.
So
thank you for that.
Yep.
So if the board would consider, and I know that we would make sure that the adequate notification is in place, but if the board would consider, I have a conflict on the 24th at the time that the board meeting is scheduled. So if the board would be willing to consider that, I think if we could move to the Monday, the 23rd at 6 p.m. instead of Tuesday, the 24th at 6 p.m. I greatly appreciate that.
I make a motion that we do so.
I'm okay with it.
yeah,
Wonderful.
I don't have any conflicts, so it's good.
Okay, great. So I'll make sure that Miranda gets that published and put into the appropriate locations so that everybody is aware. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Not a problem. Then let's go to Dean and PAC site tour.
So a couple of things as we kind of go through, I'm gonna kind of turn over, so David is gonna walk through the areas of the CTE area and kind of give us the lowdown on that. Matt Dickhausen is gonna walk through the PAC area of like our facility and the fitness center and all of those areas, and where it's kind of a common, they're gonna take teams. So we're gonna just kind of walk through that. And then as we do, so one of the things that we had kind of talked through on Thursday is having the board kind of, there will be students and individuals at each of the sites to kind of give really specific information about like what's happening in a classroom or what's happening in a different area. So as a board, I think what we're kind of hoping is that you're greeting people kind of in the comments, helping us direct people. And then you can kind of field questions that they might have as they come back. But really, the really specific stuff, there's gonna be staff and students that can really dig into and give the, like, a little bit more in the weeds definition of like what happens in this class type of stuff. So hopefully that gives you a little bit sense of comfort as you walk through, knowing that you're not gonna have to be necessarily the resident expert, because we're gonna have those people there to walk through that on Thursday with the community members.
Do you have people assigned to greet people when they come in?
That's, so all of
Would you
us
like
are
us
kind
to
of
do
in that, yes.
I mean,
Yep.
to be outside and welcome as they come.
Outside and in the commons, yep, I think that's kind of
I
where,
just think we should be spread out so that we're different places, but that greeting of people is very important.
agree.
So the plan will be that board members will have the maps to hand out.
Okay?
Perfect,
as people come in.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Now, some of them need something to do, right?
And from the 5 o'clock,
What do
from
I
the
do?
5 o'clock to 6 o'clock hour, the welcome table will be staffed by the Paynesville Area Community Foundation. They'll welcome the donors and try to get names and enter for a drawing. So they're the ones who will staff the 5 to 6, but then from 6 to 8, I believe you probably wanted a couple board members at that table with.
We do have our badges too, unless do you have something?
Yeah. Otherwise,
For name tags.
We were gonna do name tags for the 5 o'clock.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah.
otherwise, we do have, everybody has,
We got
still
our
have your
Lanyards, yeah, our
Lanyards.
lanyards.
Okay,
name tags. I think I-
It's somewhere.
Good.
In a box pack.
You could just get a name tag at 5 too when.
I have no.
Yeah.
Sure you do. You got a big house, let's just go that.
all right.
So the people that are gonna have the information, are they gonna be identified in something, so people will know who they are immediately?
Yes.
Like same color shirts, wearing a hat, or?
Yeah,
There's
so
a mat or what?
Oh, so there's gonna be balloons kind of helping to, that are gonna
that's where
identify,
they'll
and
be
maybe that's
located?
what, yep, so
I gotcha.
as we go through, we'll let David and Matt kind of talk through
Okay.
what's gonna
All
happen.
questions.
Just know
Yeah.
that, yep.
Shannon will be here
Okay.
answering any questions on that, so.
So, couple of things, logistically, just before we, or can I hop back in?
Yep.
Okay, I do wanna just take a minute to, introduce to you, Steve Guzzi. So Steve is our new buildings and grounds, person. And so, I don't know, the rest of the administrators, I will have their written report, and I can share those with you as kind of an update, and I can walk through the highlight at our next board meeting of especially the items that pertain to our strategic plan, because they've done a nice job really identifying some of the focus of what they're doing and how it aligns to our strategic plan. So, Steve, welcome, and he'll have information for us as well about buildings and grounds.
Welcome,
Okay.
Steve. Great having you on the team and excited for the future.
Thanks.
So that's what I wanted to highlight.
We have 6 minutes left. We'll just go straight to roundtable. Is there any information, thing that the board wants to know, needs to know ahead of next meeting?
Really, we're covering topics really
I
nicely.
think so as well. I think, I think we're moving forward well, and
Any
negotiations
questions for
continue
us?
to move well, so we're
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing for, I think that our community would appreciate is just having you welcome them and give them, if there's anything that you wanna point them to, hey, make sure you had a chance to check out, like David mentioned, the auto lab, go through the welding center, or, check out, I think you being present to welcome them will be really appreciated. Just as a point of reference to the individuals who were on the board at the time that the project was approved have also been invited, and they'll be able to, I think most of them are able to be there during that 5 o'clock time as well. So that'll be nice to see some of your counterparts that were part of that process.
And Bob Hewitt has a family trip planned, but he may put it off and leave after the open house, so he may be here also.
Okay, good.
Yes.
But then I think you guys mentioned if you isn't here, wanted everybody here, by 4:45 for the 5 o'clock event to start, so we all kind of have a chance to settle in and kind of find where we want to go, what we need to do. And then as far as dress is concerned, I guess I was planning kind of khakis and a polo type of, I don't know if anybody else had any other opinions towards that. I think it's-
and tie?
No suit and tie.
It's a good thing you said that, I just heard tie a moment ago. and I thought,
I'm planning on khakis and a polo, so Bulldog pride. So with that, we'll adjourn the meeting.